United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning and welcome to the October 27th County Commission meeting. I would remind you to silence your cell phones. The meeting documents are on the end of the counter next to Commissioner Bender, and Robert would have listening devices for you in the front row if you need them. And then just a note about our audio system today. The mics up here are working. The one at the counter is not working. So if you're going to be up there, you need to use a handheld microphone, and please speak loudly so we can pick it up. It won't really pick up in this room, but it does pick up on our recorded copy. So with that, we'll go into routine business. Item number 1 is consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Any additions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 2 is approve the County Commission meetings from October 20th, 2015. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 3 is bills to be paid in the amount of $1,303,311.54. Is there a motion?
Pay the bills. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there comments?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Barth.
This week's bills, which are a little high at $1.3 million, include $800,000 in highway costs, and we also have an additional 241 mental health bills, individual mental health bills.
Thank you, Commissioner Barth. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 4 is reports. There are none. Item number 5 is personnel action. Item A, consider a motion to approve routine personnel action. Is there a motion?
Make that motion. Second.
A motion and a second. Are there any questions for Carrie? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item B is consider a motion to approve seasonal and variable hour positions policy.
Good morning, Carrie Deaver from Human Resources. I provided you with a briefing memo over the weekend outlining the reasons we'd like to make a change to our current practices for how we compensate our part-time and our variable hour staff. The main reason is we want a more structured, consistent process. Currently, we have some part-time staff who are paid based on whatever we feel is appropriate for the position. Some are more structured and placed on our current pay matrix that we use for full-time staff. Some receive performance evaluations, some don't. Some receive annual adjustments to the rates of pay, and some don't. What we want to do is clean up this process a bit and make it the same for all of our part-time and variable hour staff. What we're proposing that we do is we establish pay ranges, not prescribed steps, but just open ranges for all of the positions. So we've tiered them out, and what we see is 4 different levels. The proposed ranges for 2016 are based on market factors. If we have people who are currently being paid on the matrix, that takes those ranges into account as well. What we would do is every year we'd analyze those ranges. We look at it, consider comparable county positions in market, and adjust them each year. As far as staff salary adjustments, another benefit of this proposal is that we would have a structured process for ensuring that all employees have their salary reviewed at least once a year. So what we would propose that we do is have everybody have an annual evaluation in the fall of each year. It's a more simplified evaluation form than we use for our full-time staff. And when those come back from the department heads, we'd also ask for their recommendation on a pay adjustment for the upcoming year. Those adjustments, of course, would be contingent upon your approval. We'd list them for your approval in December of each year. Now, it's almost November and we're entering 2016, so what we're proposing for the upcoming year, if you support this policy change, most people who've been on the matrix right now have already had a performance evaluation or will before December 19th, which is the first pay date in the 2016 payroll year. We would say let's continue to use that approach for those staff, and then we would ask department heads to review the salaries of all their part-time and variable hour employees and provide us with a recommendation for adjustment going forward. Those recommended adjustments would be limited to no more than what our full-time staff receive. What we would propose that we do is have those submitted to us by December, list them for your approval, so that going into 2016 we'd have established rates for all of our variable hour staff. You should be aware that if you do approve this, we do have a few people who are over the maximum of the range, and we would ask for consideration to allow a small adjustment for those staff going into 2016 as well. But from that point going forward, they would be red circled and their salary wouldn't grow in the following years until the range caught up with them. Any questions on the proposal?
Mr. Kelly.
Carrie, when you say not more than the general staff on the increases, does that include the 2.5 step and any general increase we would give?
That's what I would recommend. Now, as we go into next year, you have the unusual situation that all people are, you don't have an across-the-board adjustment really for 2016. Your full-time staff are receiving a 2.5% step if they're not at the maximum of the range. And this is, again, a transition period. The department heads have spent a lot of time looking at that, and we have 3 areas where we have a lot of staff on the matrix. You know, it'd be difficult, honestly, to give them more than what their full-time staff are receiving. So, you know, in general, going forward, I'd say, yep, we wouldn't want it to be any more than the general increase plus the step. This year, we're in sort of a situation where 2.5% really is, you know, the most somebody would receive on December 19th, and it might be 0%.
But it is a not more than, so
not more than.
Discretion is still there.
Any other questions? Is there a motion on this?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variable hour position policy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 6 is application for abatements. Pam Nelson. Good morning. Good morning.
I'm asking for an abatement on record ID 35532 for the purposes of the assessment freeze. It comes to $258.32.
Any questions for Pam?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Number 17 is notices and requests. Item A is notice from the City of Del Rapids of a public hearing at 7 p.m. on October 27, 2015, Del Rapids City Council Chambers, 302 East 2nd Street, Del Rapids, to consider recommendation to form Del Rapids Tax Increment Financing, a TIF, District Number 2. Item number 8 is planning and zoning notices. There are none. Item number 9 is compromise of lien. Jeff Barth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's for DP&O 88470 in the amount of $5,842.80. We've gotten an application on this. Wants a compromise and release of the lien in full with no payment. There is no real estate transaction involved. The lien was recorded last month and includes a single charge for public defender service. In the narrative, the applicant takes issue with the charges filed and details the personal and professional consequences he dealt with as a result of the charges. He doesn't feel he should have to pay for his criminal defense. The criminal charge was ultimately dismissed, and they list family income of $45,000 and assets up to about $160,000, including a home and 2 cars. Liabilities include a large mortgage of $111,000, $8,000 debt to a hospital, and $26,000 owed to another entity. So that's the application. The applicant is present, and Madam Chair, I know you'll tell him that he can speak if he chooses to. He doesn't have to come to the podium, doesn't have to identify himself, and can explain his reasons on this. And I guess before I make a motion, I'd invite him to do that.
So if the applicant would like to speak, you don't have to get up, you don't have to say your name, just speak loudly so we can hear you.
Yeah, I think Jeff did a good job of pointing it out. I would just say that it was an incident that happened at my place of business that works for Volunteers of America. Some kids lied and said.
And you don't have to give details if you don't want to. That's up to you.
In any case, yeah, it was an off situation. It cost me my foster care license. Kids that we were potentially looking to adopt, we've been having 2 years in that scenario. It cost me my job and other potential jobs while I had the charge going. And we're still in the process of recovering from the allegations of working through the calls. So yeah, I guess I feel that if the state would have done their due diligence with the evidence, that they wouldn't have brought charges in the first place. I can't afford a $6,000 bill.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair, if I might.
Commissioner Barrett?
You know, one of the things about these liens is that, one, we don't charge interest, and two, we're not going to garnish your salary or anything. And I guess my recommendation would be that if you made some small payments over a period of time, we'd be more likely to look at forgiving part of this. And, you know, if you go for a CAT scan because of a potential brain tumor, if they find nothing, you know, that's a good result, but they still have you pay for it. And our public defender services are at less than what a private attorney would cost you. And the fact that, you know, the charges were dropped, I think shows that they were, in fact, an advocate on your part. And so I'm not ready to forgive this at this point. Before I make a motion, I guess I'd ask others if they have any comment, or if you would like to say anything else.
I would. This isn't a CAT scan. This isn't a potential emergency involving my health. This is false allegations that were, you know, brought on me with no evidence. I mean, with very little evidence to support anything. I can't afford any payments. We've got a new child, and my daycare bill next month is going to go up to about $800 a month just with that. So I really can't afford to pay for something that you know, I feel my taxes should be paying for anyway. I pay my taxes every year. I feel like that's part of that, what that fee should cover. I had no control over the state bringing these charges up against me. I don't feel that I should have to pay for that defense.
Any other comments? I would just say, you know, we do just take very small payments. Some people pay $15 a month. It doesn't go away, and like Commissioner Barr says, there's never any interest on the loan, and it just sits out there.
I feel that my taxes should, you know, protect me in that instance if something like this would have happened.
Well, I certainly understand your concern, and you do have my sympathy. Believe me, you know, we're representing 180,000 people to whom, you know, this debt is owed. It's not, you know, if it's not my personal thing. I'm representing those people, and I guess my view is, you know, if you didn't make a payment for 5 years, that would be fine. But at that point, it would be better if you did make some. And I'm going to make a motion to deny this at this point.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any other comments or discussion?
I guess my only other comment would be that, you know, these were services that were rendered, and regardless of the, I guess I just agree with Commissioner Barth. Regardless of the merits, there were valuable services that were rendered, and like anybody else, they need to be paid for.
Don't my taxes pay for that?
No, because, you know, if that was going to be the case, everybody in this room who was ever charged with any could say the county can pay for it, and that'd be fine. But I can tell you, your taxes would go sky high to try to be able to pay for the defenses of everybody. You know, other people get private lawyers, and they pay probably twice what we charge through our public defender's office. So
Right, but what about if you can't afford it, what are you
that's what this is. But there's still, you get it at a discounted rate, and people pay them back. They pay them back every day. So it just takes a long time sometimes for people to pay them back. With that said, we're going to move on. I have a motion and a second to deny the application. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. The next is opportunity for public comment. If there's someone who would like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda, and please limit your time. Commissioner Colby. If you would please use the handheld mic and speak loudly since it doesn't broadcast up here or to anyone else.
Madam Chair and Commissioners,
Speak up.
I have more than a passing interest in your new edifice that you're going to construct in the jail. I don't know what the plans are and haven't seen anything in the media. Maybe there has been something, maybe there hasn't as far as the general plan, having worked on the original jail. Why, I know the time involved. Haven't paid much attention because of putting up an auction of my own and having been out of the country for a couple of weeks on a little vacation. I would suggest with the new potential jail where you're locating it, if I understand, between the Coliseum and the current jail, when we put the addition on the Coliseum, we thought and talked about putting an underground parking and or some sort of a sub-level storage capacity underneath there, but because of the cost, we said no. That would be just a little too expensive. Once we started building, we found more crap with capital letters than we anticipated, and by the time we got done, we could have put underground parking underneath that addition because there was a lot of material there that needed to be hauled out, and it was just one of those excessive expenses that we had to absorb. I guess it would be my recommendation that what you would look at putting subterranean parking underneath the location where the jail is that would accommodate both judges and attorneys and others that have to have a secure access to the court system. And then it would also provide some parking for those who are working their various shifts during the day for the jail. Then you would have a first level parking which would maintain the parking that is already there for the people who use the services from the courthouse, for the Coliseum, all the things that are going on there. Because once you put a building flat on the ground, you move all of the parking in various parts of the campus here, and none of it is really convenient. And that with 2 levels of parking, subterranean, ground level, then you would put your jail above that, and that would accommodate a lot of people who have to have the parking in the immediate area. I would not be surprised that once you start construction, you find a lot of stuff beneath the ground. There's also, if I remember correctly, some utilities there, and I just can't remember what all they are. We learned once that when we put the parking out here in front, that when you take utilities, if they are insulated material, and you start moving them around, you will give some light cracks and other avenues for moisture to get in. You could rebury it, and 3 to 5 years later, you'll find out that moisture has seeped in, and then you have a major expense. So we took the bull by the horns, as it were, and completely replaced old utilities, even if they're 5 years old, replaced them and put in new, so we knew we wouldn't have something we could trust. With the utilities that go across, I thought there might be a fiber optic out there. If you put that in the subterranean parking, then you have ready access to it if there happens to be some kind of shortcoming. Even if you replace the old utilities with new, and you put a building over the top, you have something go wrong, you have major expense trying to get back down to what you have buried and trying to rectify the situation. If you were to put that in a subterranean parking area, I mean, that there would maybe be a tunnel or some such as that, it would forego any of the problems that might eventually arise, and it wouldn't be necessarily 3 to 5 years, it could be 10 years down the line, but it would give you ready access to the problem. And that's just some of my thoughts at this time. it's always been a horrendous problem trying to do the planning for the future and understand the problems that go with it. But we, the county, will have more problems with incarceration until we get everybody on board and we make sure that offenses that are of non-violence are handled in a different way, and that the judicial system makes sure that when they sentence people, they sentence those appropriate to the state offenses, go to the state penitentiary, and they are not sentenced to the county jail, because that just passes the buck down to the county commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colby. Are there any questions? Okay, appreciate your comments. With that, we'll go on to regular business. Item number 10 is a public hearing to consider zoning text amendment number 15-01 to the 1990 revised zoning ordinance for Minnehaha County, amendment section 12.13B, agricultural tourism, permitted uses and section 26.2, definition for the purpose of indicating breweries and distilleries in the definition of agricultural tourism. That was a mouthful. David.
Good morning, David Heinold, Planning Department. I'd like to bring up the PowerPoint. I've got a few slides I'd like to share with the text on. Okay, so David Heinold, Planning Department. Proposed amendment was requested by Lee Anderson and Janelle Johnson to allow breweries as a special permitted use. At the August 24th Planning Commission meeting, staff was directed to allow other uses such as distilleries to the requested agricultural tourism ordinance section. And this would be added as a special permitted use. So if they didn't meet the conditions that would be set forth in the ordinance, then they would have to come back for an agricultural tourism permit or a conditional use permit before the Planning Commission, which sets forth, they bring in a site plan narrative of the business, which describes things like parking, access to the facility, the amount of visitors, the number of number of events that they would have. And this ordinance, as we bring that up, would allow breweries and distilleries to that as a special permitted use. It also adds a section in there for recall and review, which gives us the same power as conditional use permits to go back and review these operations that are out there to make sure that they're still meeting those conditions and what's set forth in the agricultural tourism ordinance, and then as well as adds a revocation section, which gives the Planning Commission the jurisdiction to revoke a permit or have it reviewed and change conditions around how they see fit. And then in addition to that, the winery section was revised for clarification to change some wording around to match the brewery section. You got it. And more specifically, the residential requirement was changed to allow the operator of the brewery, the distillery, or the winery, which would be the same text, to live within 1 mile of the site. This is something that the Planning Commission is bringing forth to this body. And then lastly, the definition section was revised to add in things like hops, barley, oats, and things that would be used in breweries and distilleries. So just go through this real quick. As you see, the text right there for breweries and distilleries would be in operation to South Dakota codified law, which mainly consists of a lot of registration requirements and licensing. Doesn't go into the specifics that wineries has to deal with in terms of the operation itself. And other things like accessory uses that would be allowed, tours, picnics, and hay rides, and then retail, being able to sell certain items and paraphernalia. Food concessions, being able to have on-site food preparation, things like food trucks. Number 3, tasting room events with foods, then having a deli service, which doesn't include restaurants or cook-to-order food. This ordinance doesn't include that. Special events, as I mentioned, would include a maximum of 4 special events throughout the year. Additional ones, they could request a temporary use permit, which would be reviewed through the planning department. And then private events would be determined by us in terms of the capacity for those events. So if they wanted to submit that, they can submit a plan in writing to the planning department, and then we would tell them how many people or what the maximum capacity is. And then the last one, there was a little bit of discrepancy. So if I back up here to the first sentence, under 7 right there, it said breweries or wineries producing and selling a product in tasting room with the product, 1 acre of product must be produced in the wine. So that was changed in this next section. So right here in G, the minimum 1 planted acre was just moved down to that right there. And that's the same thing in the winery section, which includes 1 acre of crop used for processing, preparation, etc., manufacture. And then here's the H, the operator of the brewery, distillery must reside within 1 mile of the site. And then I was changed in the winery section as well to correspond with the change to H, which the residential requirement that the operation must be secondary to the principal use of the property as agricultural production site. And then if the ag production were to cease, then the brewery or the operation shall cease. And then there's also the same 10-acre minimum size requirement. Again, if they were less than that, then they could come back to the Planning Commission for review. Permit. The recall review section, which details out, gives us the Planning Commission the power to review these permits if they're not meeting the criteria. And mostly these would be based on complaints that are submitted to our office. And then the revocation section, I'd like to point out one change to this one right here. This is listed as K, which should be IJ, so it skips a letter. So that would be a change that I would request that be made just to help maintain that consistency and not having a space there. And then the winery section is the same. Just a few additions to that. The word small was in there. There's really nothing in there that limits the size of the operation, so it's really more of a descriptor word. Doesn't need to be in there, so that was crossed out. And then everything else I've already mentioned as far as the similarities between the breweries and distilleries section. And then the definition section, as I mentioned, adds beer and spirits to that list of uses that can be permitted as ag tourism. And then products, like I mentioned, right there, the underlined section. And then these were corrected to fix some spelling errors in the agricultural tourism word. Tourism was spelled in both of these, so no text is changed in these two. And then again, the same thing. The titles were changed to fix spelling errors. And then recreation facility was in the wrong spot in alphabetical order, so it's being moved to 572 from 503. And then if that's all I have, everything has been included. Notice of this public hearing was published on October 9th and the 14th. Planning Commission unanimously recommends approval of zoning text amendment 1501. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay. Is there any questions for David? Commissioner Kelly.
On I, the secondary principal use of the property, I guess I'm not, if you only got 10 acres, are you talking about a row crop or?
So this section is referring to secondary to the principal use of the property as agricultural production, since H was changed to the operator must reside within 1 mile of the site, which is different from what has been required in the past. They had to live on the property. So this is a change that the Planning Commission is advancing. And the site is being used for agricultural production because it's being used for the agricultural tourism use or growing hops, barley, hop.
And the purpose of changing it to 1 mile is what?
The purpose of changing it to 1 mile is just to recognize the flexibility that this gives operators to not have to live on site, and gives it more of a reality of helping to protect agricultural production, and I think that's something that was brought forth in the Planning Commission and throughout the minutes. It's just to reflect the reality of not having to live on
That's
this.
always been before, is that you had to live on site, right?
Yeah.
Like most wineries around here, the house,
So there's merit to the operator having to live on site because they're invested in that, but this gives them the flexibility to be able to still be in the area and have a concern for the operation itself, and not just because it was debated during the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting to not have a residential requirement and completely remove that, but that would help promote things like, they might promote glorified bars or something like that. Somebody could live further removed from the site and then not being close to it at all, which this helps create more consistency between what's already out there with agricultural production and what's present in the area.
Well, there was originally, if I mean, originally it was put in there that they lived on site for a reason. I mean, I think now it appears to me we're allowing, you could live in Brandon and a half mile out of town you could have this facility.
So
has it been a problem in the past? Or are we talking a singular issue here?
So I guess I could just point to some of the operations that are already out there. Some of them do have that residence on site where the operation is with the wineries, because that's the only wineries. And then there are some where the parcel may be 40 acres, so it could be larger than that, where the house could be a half mile from the operation, and it's still on site. So really there's no difference between the two in terms of allowing the operator to live within 1 mile. And the applicant can clarify on this if you have any further questions. Because
is there any other questions for David? Thank you, David. I'd just like to say, too, for those that are listening at home, we understand that you're having difficulty hearing the audio. This is the last day for this audio system. Today they will be replacing it all, and you just bear with us. We realize you can't necessarily hear everything we're saying, but we're doing the best we can with what we have, and next week we'll have a new audio system. So, all right, if there's no more questions for David, this is a public hearing, so we'll listen to the proponents. If you are in favor of the change of the ordinance, you may come up and speak now. Please use the microphone, speak loudly, give your name and address.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lee Anderson. Our hop farm address is 26677 Valley Springs. I currently live at 409 South Hawthorne here in Sioux Falls. Just to kind of clarify why we're asking to live a little ways off the property, my family has a homestead that was built in 1864, which is about, I don't know, like 40 acres away from where our farm is. Somebody owns the property between it, and I would just like to be able to live up in an established tree grove with a little bit of heritage rather than taking up farmland and putting up a new tree grove and trying to let that kind of grow. So that's kind of why we asked to live just a little ways off the property.
So your address again was in Sioux Falls?
That's correct, sir.
And you still live within a mile of this, or does the homestead live within a mile?
The homestead is within a mile. I have to travel out of town every day to get there.
But he's going to move. That's the point. He's moving.
We had asked for like a 3 to 5 years so we could let our businesses get up and running and then sell our home and be able to build a home. But just to be able to live a mile off is nice. So we're in a real tree grove. It overlooks the farm.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Benega?
I guess this is a question for Scott or David. What happens if there wasn't a homestead there and somebody wanted to live or wanted to start this business, but there was no building eligibility issues? We're not making the people who built the, whatever you want to call it, the entertainment and all seasons, if you will, facility last week live on site.
So, David Heinel, Planning Department. So if I understand your question correctly, is that if there was no building eligibility and somebody wanted to operate
business,
if they did not meet those conditions that were approved by this body, then they would have to go back before the Planning Commission in order to be able to start that operation. So there wouldn't. So whatever is passed with that language, if they don't meet that requirement, then they can't operate and have that operation out there. That's
So a good point. So somebody who buys 40 acres can't start a winery unless he buys 40 acres with the building eligibility. He couldn't even consider starting one if he doesn't own a building eligibility. Commissioner Barth?
Is that correct?
correct.
Commissioner Barth?
You know, the difference is, though, the one is a commercial thing and this is an ag thing. So, you know, you have agricultural land producing an agricultural product, and that's where we're going with this. If the other place we worked on last week was opening as a winery, a lot of the issues, except for the residence part, would certainly be, you know, blunted, because it's not a if they threw some grapes around their event center and called it a winery, it would fall under a completely different kind of regulation. We've not had breweries in rural Minnehaha County before, and so this is, I guess, an attempt to bring forward the idea that folks that are interested in raising hops, and I drove by their area out there, and it's an amazing little acreage with, you know, hops hanging from these. I don't know if they're vines or what you call it, but it's I think they produce some hundreds of pounds of hops at this point, which they sell to others, but in the future they hope to make their own, and I plan to visit.
Additional comments? I'm still a little stuck on Commissioner Benega's question in just a minute.
I still got a question on that.
And that is that I could own 40 acres in the country and grow wheat or corn or anything on it, live in Sioux Falls, and it's okay. But if I decide that I want to grow hops, and if I don't sell it to someone else, suddenly I have to, and even if I grew corn and I decided to eat all the corn at my house, I could do that legally and live in Sioux Falls. But if I want to grow hops and I want to use it, I can't unless I live on that 40 acres, and it does seem a little strange to me. Commissioner Kelly.
I guess I don't follow that. We're saying if he's going to have a ag business, which is
Eventually.
brewery or winery, I don't know which it was, but that you have to live on the property. I'm just concerned that we're opening the door to going out and buying. You know, you could buy 10 acres and pay for the eligibility to have it, you know, have it there too, because you got 4 1/4, right? And I assume there is a building eligibility on this piece.
I just want to clarify.
Don't answer that question. Is there a building eligibility on this piece?
There's two.
Thank you. Okay.
I want to clarify for the record that it may not have been clear, but they can come back for a conditional use permit that would be ultimately approved or denied by the planning department if they did not meet the criteria that's set forth in this section, because these are special permitted uses, and that means that they can come back to the planning commission with an application if they wanted to live elsewhere, not within a mile, as this states, and have that reviewed by the planning commission.
Commissioner
You still
Benega.
haven't answered my question, though. If there's no building building eligibility available, they couldn't do this project or this business.
That's not exactly.
The microphone.
Yeah, that's not exactly correct because, like I mentioned, they can still apply to live elsewhere, but that would still have to be reviewed by the Planning Commission.
So, Gerald, can you repeat your question, because I want to make sure I understand. Your question is
If this couple would like to start this brewery, distillery, winery, whatever, and they owned the 10 acres, but there was no building eligibility on that 10 acres, they could not do it without a special conditional use permit?
they'd have to get a conditional use permit if they
What's
live.
the benefit of living on the property only to say that you live there for the 10 acres, that you're on the 10 acres you own?
Well, the benefit, I suppose, would be that you would be closer there to monitor your business activity, but it's not a requirement. You could apply for a conditional use permit if you don't meet the criteria. If you lived more than a mile away, you would simply have to apply for a conditional use permit instead of having it available by right under this special permitted uses.
And if they didn't want to live on the property, they like living where they're at,
They could apply for a conditional use permit.
it seems like anti-economic development. I mean, that's way too much restrictions from my standpoint. That's controlling property that you own and telling them people where you have to live. That's kind of like, well, I can't even give you a good example because there shouldn't be one. But
And actually, we are making it less restrictive now. Our ordinance right now, says if you own a winery, you have to live on that property. We are now changing that to say you could live within a mile of it. So we are reducing or making it less restrictive right now with this change.
it's a good step.
It's a good step.
Not far enough, but good enough.
But and that was one of the things that we discussed. So it is an option. I mean, there is an availability. There is an avenue that would allow someone, if you wanted to live in Sioux Falls and you had a winery that was 5 miles out of town, you don't meet the criteria for a special permitted use, you could apply for a conditional use permit.
So just to follow up on that question, so if this particular couple decides they're going to start their business tomorrow, they're not planning on moving out there for 5 years, they now have to get a conditional use permit to live in Sioux Falls as they're working on their business even though they're moving out there?
It would not be that they're living in Sioux Falls, it's that they're operating the business out in the
Right.
county. Yeah, that's correct.
Commissioner Kelly has a comment. Come back.
Are there any examples in the county right now of special uses, particularly winery or brewery?
No, there
Where
are.
they don't live on the property?
There are no breweries out in the county. All of the wineries, the people reside on the parcel now.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bennigan. Oh,
I'm still
sorry.
trying to figure this out.
Commissioner
Madam Chair,
Barnes.
I would just, as an aside, point out that at the wineries I'm aware of, they also sell beer.
Additional comments? Thoughts?
I think the residential requirement is an unnecessary requirement.
Did you want to make a motion on that, or do you want to hear the opponents if there are any?
Well, I think we ought to hear the opponents.
Okay. Are there any opponents to this change in text? There are none. So now, did you want to make a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the
Zoning
condition-
text.
Yeah, the zoning ordinance without the residential requirement.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Can I pass the gavel to second, or would someone second for me?
We can.
I'll second it for you.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second to pass the ordinance without the residential requirement of living within 1 mile. Is there discussion on that?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner
I
Barron?
think that there is reason that having an owner in close proximity, our forebears determined that the idea of having a large vats of wine or other beverage unattended out in a remote area might impel a caravan of wine seekers or whatever to show up at on Halloween and cause some disruption. And I think that they had an idea that this restriction was a good idea.
Commissioner Benega. Or Bender, excuse me. Sorry, too many B's.
I mean, I'm personally, frankly, I second it for purposes of discussion. I don't think I would support it. I mean, if they want a commercial use for this property, they have an opportunity to come in and rezone the property commercial. This is providing an agricultural use for the property. And the condition that makes it still agricultural as opposed to commercial is the fact that they're living there and they're farming it. And they have an opportunity through the conditional use process to not live there if they choose not to. I don't think we're overly restricting their use of this farmland by requiring that if they want a commercial use for it, to use for commercial purposes, for a brewery, and to hold events there, that the condition that they live within a mile is not overly restrictive in my mind.
Additional comments? Commissioner Kelly.
Well, I'm not going to support the motion for a different reason. I prefer the existing rules that we have. Yes, the opportunity is there for the conditional use permit. It's nothing to do with the crops that are grown there. You can grow hops, you can grow corn, you can grow soybeans, whatever you want. But it has all to do with the fact that there's a commercial operation on it, and we've set up the agricultural related so that there's kind of home business types available to the rural residents of this county. At this point, I think we're just opening a door to some development we don't really want to see without certain limitations on it.
Additional comments?
I do. I still don't understand the logic, and our forebears usually walk, so there wasn't any DUIs that we were worried about. The real issue is, I don't understand why someone who has the initiative and the abilities and owns 10 acres of property has to live on it to make it a, quote, viable business without going through extra steps. If they didn't have this homestead that was close by, under the existing stuff, they would have to go through a whole bunch of other steps to get their, quote, permit to operate something that makes good sense. Sometimes common sense and rules aren't always in the same arena, and I'm afraid that this one is one of those, from my opinion.
Are there any other comments?
I think it's a discouragement to economic development in the rural communities.
You ready to vote on this motion? This motion would be to approve it with omitting the part on the distance that their house has to be from the agricultural area. I think we should maybe do a roll call vote. Commissioner Barr?
No.
Dender?
No.
Benega?
Yes.
Kelly?
No.
Yes, motion fails 3-2. So now is there a motion on the original request, which was to change the zoning text ordinance to allow for breweries and distilleries?
That's my motion,
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
if I may, on discussion.
Yep.
I think Commissioner Benega brings up a good point, and I think we can address that perhaps through the Planning Commission going forward.
I think it should be addressed again. So we are going to, this is a motion and a second to approve the zoning text as presented today. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Same sign. Motion passes 4-1. So, all right, thank you. All right, we will go on with item number 11, which is authorize the chairman to sign the 2016 agreement between Minnehaha County and the Department of Veterans and Military Affairs for Joint Security Protection Agreement. Keith Minnehaha, good morning.
Good morning. Keith Minnehaha, the Air Guard Division Supervisor.
You have to use the microphone and speak loudly. Thank you.
Right. Seeking your approval for the 2016 agreement with the South Dakota Department of Veterans and Military Affairs. This agreement has the initial funding of $694,000, 540 and 54 cents. Through the government funding process, the $73,896 $1,000.46 needed to cover the total cost of our operations of the 12 officers. Will arrive later in the fiscal year, and that usually shows up April or May timeframe every year. This delay in the total payment will not affect any monthly expenses of the county may have or be a financial burden to the county in any way throughout the extent of the contract. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Do you have any questions for Mr. Winnie? Is there a motion?
So move.
Second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the authorization. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 12 is consider a motion to authorize emergency management to, I'm going to read them both, Lynn, unless you want to read them.
Nope, go ahead.
I think we can do this as one motion after he explains it. Assign a sub-recipient grant between agreement between Minnehaha County and the South Dakota Department of Health to act as a fiduciary agent for management of Region 3 South Dakota Hospital Preparedness Programs funds, and to sign the consulting agreement with cities Consulting to provide partnership development and technical assistance to Region 3 South Dakota Hospital Preparedness Response Partners.
Good morning, Commissioners. Linda Young, Emergency Management Office. Before you is a grant agreement with the state of South Dakota, and then a secondary contract with Jan Kleitz for work with that. I work with, or I'm a part of, a regional hospital coalition that includes facilities from up and down the I-29 corridor. As part of that last year, the county acted as a fiduciary agent for this grant. And things relating from our office went very well. Our duties just include processing payments for the grant items that this coalition chooses to spend their dollars on. Attached, once again this year, is a budget, and then the agreement with the Kleitz Consulting for her work. All of her duties are led and directed by the coalition, so I don't have any direct impact on that. That's led by the group. And then, like I said, we just act as a fiduciary agent. This grant does include a 10% administrative or fiduciary agent or fiduciary allotment. And you can see that on the budget also. So I am requesting the Commission to authorize the Emergency Management Director to enter into the agreement with the state of South Dakota and to authorize the execution of the required documentation, including the independent contractor agreement for the grant.
Is there any questions for Lynn? For a motion that would encompass both A and B.
Make a motion to approve both A and B.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Lynn. Item number 13 is consider a motion to authorize application for fiscal year 2017 contractual grant funding from the South Dakota Weed and Pest Commission. Mr. Hammer.
Good morning. Ralph Hammer, Weed Supervisor. I'm requesting permission to sign this application for this grant. It's a $5,000 grant that they give out to all counties that meet the criteria. And I'd also request to sign the grant when it comes in, which will be sometime in February after they have their meeting, and then apply for the monies after we've completed it.
Any questions?
I'd make a motion to authorize the application for this grant.
Second.
The motion is second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 14 is consider a motion to approve a resolution of the sale of the tax deed property RDID 29128. Bob Litz.
Good morning, Commission. Bob Litz from the Auditor's Office, and it's true that the RDI 29128 has recently made full payment for the last parcel on the tax deed and surplus property sale that we had on September 26. The action that we're requesting today is the approval of the resolution of sale so that we may abate all outstanding taxes, penalties, and interest, and direct the Treasurer's Office to issue a quitclaim deed to the new owner.
Any questions for Bob? Is there a motion?
So move.
Motion. Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Bob. Item number 15 is consider a motion to rescind bid award to Wildcat Roofing for the W.H. Lyons Fairground Facility exterior repairs for non-compliance. Robert Wilson. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Wilson with the Commission Office. In August, Wildcat Roofing of Minnehaha, Nebraska, submitted the lowest bid on a bid project to make hail damage repairs on various buildings out at the W.H. Lyon Fairgrounds. And this focused on the siding and roofing on a number of these buildings that were damaged by the hail the previous summer. Their low bid was $139,527, and that bid, the commission did award the project to Wildcat Roofing based on that bid on August 18th. Following that, the following week, representatives of the commission office, Sioux Empire Fair Association, Wildcat Roofing, Midwest Family Mutual Insurance, and Perspective, which was the architectural firm that drew up the RFP and the specs for this project, all met to review the scope of the work, finalize a construction project, and organize the work moving forward. As part of that review, there were a number of minor changes that were agreed to by all parties, that gauges of steel that might be more appropriate on certain sections of the property, or very similar but not identical products that were more easily available. And those changes were agreed to by, again, both Wildcat and the commission office and the insurer, who was involved in these meetings. And that was going to, those minor changes were going to require that at the same time we brought a construction contract forward for your consideration, we would also bring a change order in the amount of $9,161. And that would bring a total project cost at that point to $148,688, which was still going to be below the insurer's estimate to fix the damage. Since that time, communication with Wildcat has become challenging and led both the commission office and Perspective Architecture to question this contractor's ability to perform the work reflecting the bid that they submitted and the original terms of the project that they bid. 2 weeks ago, Wildcat made another reach out to Perspective Architecture and asked for a price increase to include weather barrier within this project. That is an item that was clearly defined in the original RFP that went out, and the response, they forwarded that to our office, and the response was no, that needed to be included within the bid price. That was part of the original package that was asked for, and as part of a complete project, it needs to be included. At that point, Wildcat responded with a price that they would perform the work for, and that price was $192,510.72, $52,983 greater than the original bid, and $43,822.72 higher than what would have been the final project cost with the change order. There were also a number of comments that the commission office, the county, had not provided bonding information or other information requested to Wildcat in a timely manner, and we have time date stamped emails verifying the provision of that information in the timely manner. At this point, given where we are at, the commission office requests that the commission rescind the bid award to Wildcat Roofing for hail damage repair to various buildings at the W.H. Lyon Fairground based on its inability and or unwillingness to perform consistent with its bid and South Dakota law, and to authorize the auditor's office to republish a notice of business to bidders for this project. I would further note that we have both Midwest Family Mutual, the insurer in this project, and Perspective are aware of this and have supported the recommendation. When it appeared that this could potentially be the way we were going, one of the first calls was to be in close contact with our insurer, because there is a holdback amount on this, and the insured, the total estimate of damage was approximately $150,000. We received approximately $95,000 up front with a holdback of roughly $95,000, and wanted to make very clear that they understood the reason we were looking for this delay and why we felt that it would be the best course of action to do, and so far they are supportive of that and understand the position that we are in. Additionally, I would just tell you that I'm hearing feedback from both perspective and also the insurer that they feel we may be in a better bidding climate now, because this is not a project that cannot be completed through the winter season, and that as a number of firms schedules lighten up from the heaviest bidding or work season, that they may be in a better position to work this into their schedules. I stand by for questions, and that's really the process that we have gone through and the motion that we are asking for today.
Any questions for Robert?
Yeah.
Commissioner Kelly?
Robert, was there, apparently there was no bond or cash required at the opening, at the bid opening? Is that, I mean, they didn't have a performance bond required when the bids were opened? That they had to get one, is that?
Oh, Cindy's got an answer for you.
We did supply a bid bond for the projects. We do have a check for a bid bond. The performance and payment bond would come at the time that the contract was returned to us, and then sent us that performance and payment bond. And that's what he is saying that he is not willing to provide.
Okay, but then he would forfeit the bid bond, would he not?
Kirsten, you have a comment, please?
Well, I won't comment on the forfeiture of the bid bond, but I will say this. South Dakota statute is clear that a performance bond is required. As I understand my communication with Robert, this gentleman was insistent that it was not required, and I view that as non-compliance with state law. There's a refusal to provide that.
So then,
Commissioner Kelly.
Then my question is there any penalties or forfeitures that will occur because of their failure to meet the conditions of the bid? I mean, it's going to cost us more money. We're going to have to do another RFP and
that would be speculation at this point. I'd have to look at those terms at this point. I don't know.
Is there?
Well, but I'm trying to think. What's the purpose of the bid bond if there's no penalty?
I have to look at the criteria in the bid bond and what went down here. What I can tell you at this point is we have a successful bidder that is refusing to perform at or near the price quoted, is adding specifications that were clearly in the bid in doing a major price change, and I was also refusing to provide a performance bond. That is something legally that we'll have to look at to see if some of that bid bond is going to be forfeited, but I don't have that information right now to opine on that.
Is it something we will pursue, though?
Yes, I will look at that.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I would ask Kirsten another question there, which are we following the correct procedure on taking this contract away at this point? Do you?
Yeah, in my opinion, we are. The criteria that are being put forth by the successful bidder at this point is not even in the neighborhood of what was originally posted. I mean, you could see the danger in allowing this, that you could ratchet up your price after you're the successful bidder over time in a major way. Otherwise,
Madam Chair, I guess I'll make a motion to rescind the bid award to Wildcat Roofing on the W.H. Lyons Fairground.
Is there a second?
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Robert. Do you have a question to ask?
yeah, rebid.
Oh, and we need a motion to republish. Is there a motion to republish, authorize republishing?
I'll make that motion to republish.
In a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Cindy. Item number 16 is Minnehaha County Liaison Assignment Reports. Are there any reports? Item number 17 is new business. Is there any new business? Item number 18 is old business. Is there any old business?
Madam
Carol
Chair.
Muller. Oh, excuse me.
Go ahead. I'd rather.
Okay.
Commissioners would just remind you that the last of the legislative summer study is this Wednesday, and we have prepared a briefing for that committee based upon the PowerPoint or the memo that you received last week about long-term financial projections for the county. On top of that, this weekend you did receive several possible bills for their consideration. We've asked the auditor's office to look at them, and when possible, if we have any background information, to put financial notes together on those. The other part really are style and form changes that they're talking about. So we look forward. Dick Kelly, Bob Litz, and myself will be leaving this afternoon. And the PowerPoint I have submitted already to the LRC, and anticipate that if it isn't up yet, will be up shortly.
Anything? Commissioner Kelly?
I believe in the agenda there is a time for public input.
A brief time, yes.
Is there anybody on, I guess we would like to know if there's any commissioners that would have any issues that they would like us to address at this point.
Commissioner Bender, you had a comment?
I'm just curious. I know there's some discussion in the building committee meeting last week about updating some of those financial numbers to show what the impact of the proposed jail would be to the county long term. Was that information updated to include any of that?
No, because we have not gotten numbers yet. I know that Kim has been in touch and with the sheriff's office. We don't have anything at this particular point from Shive Hattery.
Okay. Any idea when we might have that?
We haven't heard back from him.
Okay. It'd be important to keep pushing for that, I think.
Any other? Commissioner Barth?
I guess I'd just like to make a comment under old business. I have a family member who's involved in law enforcement, and we're getting these videos regularly of malfeasance, potential malfeasance by police officers. But how come there's no video of a highway patrolman being stopped by 4 people along the interstate? Did nobody drive by? Did nobody think about giving this person aid? I'm enraged at that incident that happened there, and I'm ticked off that nobody thinks to video record malfeasance by our fellow citizens when they're doing this kind of thing.
Any other old business? Okay. With that, I'd look for a motion into executive session for potential litigation and contract negotiations.
That's my motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.